Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, AJ Gonzalez. And here we are, guys. Another positive week in Dodger baseball. They win 4 out of 6 in Cleveland and Boston. Tons to get to. AJ, I'll start with you. I mean, 8 series victories in a row. I'm running out of positive things to say about this team.
Well, Blake's not here, so I don't have to be the Debbie Downer. Let's wait till we play some super elite teams. For one, who cares? They're still winning. 2, just wait for the weekend. And 3, they're still winning. So love seeing it. Like even some of the places where they're not been perfect, you don't got to be perfect to win. You just got to be good.
Matt, I know you're sort of maybe on the less optimistic side than me, but I mean, here's another week with 2 series on the road. You have the weird, adversity that they faced going up against the Cleveland grounds crew. They go to Boston, which, I mean, the Red Sox aren't a powerhouse necessarily, but I mean, again, it's 2 series on the road, and yet again, they take 2 out of 3 in both. And as I said, 8 consecutive victories when it comes to series wins.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been open about my sort of, I guess, doubts, if you will, about this team earlier on. And more recently, I've also given them credit for outperforming my expectations, and they just continue to do that. Obviously, I think it helps when Mookie Betts is on another level consistently. I mean, he's playing out of this world right now, and I know we're going to get into a lot of the MVP talk that has gained some national attention since you, Blake, and myself sat here a week ago and tried to inform people that, hey, Ronald Acuna isn't actually running away with the award anymore. Yeah. But yeah, Dodgers are playing well. Freddie Freeman, he's slipped a little bit in terms of, I think, some of his consistency, but overall still having a great season, obviously. And yeah, I think for me, the big story of the past week was the Dodgers played a series in Boston without any sort of weather issues, because, man, that one against the Guardians was brutal to cover and have to work.
It was amazing to watch the Red Sox series when it was like legitimately pouring at one point and they're playing baseball versus the Guardians, who put tarps on the field 25 minutes before it ever started raining. I mean, what a bizarre, and honestly, to your point, the Red Sox series had rain forecast for like 72 consecutive hours. All 3 games go off without a hitch. So just a bizarre week of weather, but they survived, heading back to Los Angeles. Unfortunately, I was in LA. Matt and I got to hang out. Blake also, it's a famous dinner that it was had. Chicken Parmesan was ordered, for those that were wondering, but I somehow timed my trip the only time we could do it. And the Dodgers were on a road trip. So unfortunate for me, but they go and win 4 of 6 anyway. So again, thank you to everybody who's joining us live on YouTube, joining us live on Facebook. We appreciate you. We try and be here every Sunday night at 7:10 p.m. talking Dodgers, recapping the week that was, as well as previewing the week ahead. So thank you to those joining us live. Again, we're going to get some live question and answers. As always, if you've got a super chat, you have something pressing you want to say or ask, throw a super chat at us. We'll stop what we're talking about and get to that. For those joining us after the fact on YouTube or the podcast, thank you as well. We appreciate the growing support. Our numbers are going way up, so thank you for that. Tons to cover tonight. We are going to talk Mookie Betts MVP watch here in just a second. Huge injury updates on a number of Dodgers pitchers, including Walker Buehler and Blake Treinen. We'll do a little stock watch on 3 young guys, Gavin Stone, Ryan Pepiot, and Michael Busch, who have featured over the past week. And then we're going to get to some Alex Verdugo comments that I can't believe he actually said out loud and maybe believes at the bottom of his heart. So that's going to be a fun one. And then finally, how about a Braves 4-game set this upcoming weekend? A huge series for us to preview. So thank you everyone for joining us. But let's dive right in. Matt, you mentioned it, the Mookie Betts MVP situation. A week ago, if you missed this story, a week ago, Matt, Blake, and I are texting. We're prepping for the show. And I said, hey, is there anything I'm missing storyline-wise? And I think it was Matt said, hey, we should talk Mookie MVP. And I was like, why? Acuna's like minus 900 to win. You could bet the whole field for plus 600. Why are we talking about this? Blake responds, hey, it's actually a lot closer. I'm like, all right. So I look it up. I'm like, sure, we'll put it in. So I started doing research. Mookie at the time was 15-1. He was behind Freddie Freeman in MVP odds, by the way. He was 15-1 a week ago. A week ago, he was 15-1. And I looked at the numbers, and I'd make the case. We all made the case. Mookie was better than Ronald Acuna. Like, every number except for stolen bases, Mookie is better at. And the unquantifiable, he plays 3 positions, wasn't even factored in. Well, here we are, guys, 7 days later. DraftKings, he's now the favorite. He's minus 135. He went from 15-1 to minus 135. Matt, it's all deserved, but what a bizarre week in betting. Some of us may have gotten in at 15-1, by the way, and we're feeling really good about things. But what do you make of a week of just absurd odds changes?
First and foremost, I think it's clearly the power of our DodgerHeads show. You know, Sunday night, like we're making, we're severely impacting the betting trends out there.
It was 10-1 the next day, and then 2 days later, Passon's all over it. So, I mean, you could draw a straight line between these 3 things, Matt.
Definitely. And obviously, you know, Mookie is on a crazy stretch right now. And I think that all kind of tongue-in-cheek comments aside, that really is what's driving this. I think he steadily was playing his way back into the conversation, because up until this current stretch, maybe I'd have to go back and really look at when Mookie started to take off. It feels like August pretty much, maybe the end of July. But before that, I was thinking, you know, hey, Freddie Freeman's not getting enough recognition as an MVP candidate. And so I thought, you know, Freddie Freeman would be somebody who we're going to be sitting here saying, hey, he should be in the MVP talk. Mookie put together this great month, obviously a particularly hot last week to 10 days, if you want to, you know, narrow it down even more so. And so now here we are. I think obviously the betting stuff is fun to look at, but you know, they're very much trying to play, you know, kind of both sides with however the money is sort of going. And I think Jeff Passan basically threw gasoline on the fire with his tweets. And then, you know, I saw some replies to him from different Braves fans saying, you know, Acuna has however many stolen bases. I think he's close to 60. I don't know if he happened to get any tonight. And then, you know, now here we are, like you said,
freaking torch to the Braves fans who wanted to talk stolen bases. It was a beautiful.
He pointed out that, you know, Acuna has all these stolen bases, but his actual base running value was like slightly better than Freddie Freeman's, which I thought was great because Freddie Freeman runs the bases very well. I think it's an underrated part of his game. And what I also particularly enjoyed was Passan's tweet focused on Mookie Betts, Acuna, and Freddie Freeman. And like I mentioned to you on our show Friday night, there was no Matt Olson there mentioned, which if you ask Braves fans, the MVP race, like I said a couple days ago, is down to Acuna and Matt Olson.
Yeah. It's what a bizarre. I'm with the Passan tweet had me dying because he just lays out, you know, again, there was nothing unique about what we were saying. Maybe we were just early in saying it, I would argue. And yet Passan lays it all out. Braves fans freak out. And then he goes absolutely flame torch to the Braves fans. And I think he even called them like sad Braves fans to all the sad Brave fans in my mention. I freaking love Passan. I'm all in on Passan. But those are the moments where even like, I remember when it was 15-1 and I was talking to a buddy, I'm like, are you going to bet this? He's like, yeah, I mean, it's just the narrative is so strong in favor of Acuna that he was like, I'm not going to bet it. And then all of a sudden, as soon as Passan starts tweeting about Mookie Betts and being the MVP favorite, he is the national narrative. You know, he's the Woj of Major League Baseball. So all of a sudden, the narrative is shifting. Mookie has this huge series. He's front and center in Boston. It's the whole Mookie coming back to Boston. And guess what? He continues absolutely raking. AJ, I want to loop you in here. And I see we have a super chat. We're going to get to that. Eric Steven had this stat. Mookie Betts has 35 hits in his last 70 at-bats. How's this for an August slash line? He's hitting 464. He's an on-base percentage of 514 and a slug of 814 for the month of August, which, by the way, it's August 27th. That wasn't like 6 days ago. A heater is underselling, AJ, what we're seeing from Mookie Betts right now.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like you said, a week ago, this was a fool's errand or a ridiculous, like, flamethrower kind of comment. And now you guys probably have looked, but what do you think is batting average? And I know batting average is an old stat, but
I love it. I love it. Bring it.
Don't worry. For all my old school guys and my stat nerds, I've got some meat for both of you. Guess what he's batting in his last 7 games?
Ooh. 600?
Yeah, 600. Literally 600. His slug, not his OPS, his slug is over 1,000. What else can you say?
Yeah, he's insane. He's insane. And I mean, again, he's like, he was even money today. And I was like, and now he's the favorite. Crazy, crazy stuff for Mookie. And again, I think the trajectory that he is on, and sometimes being the favorite for 6 months can actually sort of hurt your case because it becomes dry. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, let's talk about something. Oh, how about Mookie? And then you look at the numbers and Mookie's numbers are actually better. Again, like weighted runs created plus, offensively, he's better. Defensively, he's better. It's literally just stolen bases. And as Patton and many other people have pointed out, stolen bases is a good stat, but it's not entirely helpful. I think he's been thrown out like 11 times. Like there's a number of things that aren't necessarily working in his favor. Not to mention, at one time they were talking about him being like a 40-80 guy, and now those numbers have come down. So it's like the hopes have come down and down and down. So we'll see. Keep an eye on the Mookie Betts MVP stuff. Let's get to the super chat. Michael, we appreciate it. I didn't know we'd be getting into offseason trade talk this quickly in the show, but here we are. Michael, again, thank you for the super chat. Tariq Skubal trade for the offseason ? Potentially no lefties in the rotation next year. Urias is leaving. Kershaw may retire, and no Grove isn't it. Okay, first, can we just hold off on Kershaw retiring? I mean, since when have the Dodgers had trouble finding lefties to pitch in the rotation? I will look at Tariq Skubal here with Detroit, arbitration eligible for the first time next year, not a free agent until 2027, but 26-year-old, has made just 9 starts this year and yet has been solid in those starts. He was a 3-win player last year. He's just under 2 wins this year. I think we would all agree, right, Matt and AJ? I'll start with you, Matt, that pitching is going to be the talk of the offseason. Again, I don't know. I mean, none of us are prepared to give you a list of our favorite offseason pitching targets. But sure, Tariq Skubal, 3 years of team control, been a solid pitcher. I'm not crossing him off my list.
No, definitely not. I could see this as a potential target for the Dodgers in the offseason. I think what ultimately this potential trade and what other possible options is going to come down to is the asking price, obviously. And considering how many years of team control there still are, it's probably going to be pretty high. And so, will that shy the Dodgers away? Because I think they'll very much be in a position where they would rather, I think we've seen in the past, where they'd rather spend money and hold on to some of their prospects. The flip side to that is they do have a little bit of a 40-man roster crunch coming with the Rule 5 draft and stuff like that. So they will have some trade chips that need to be moved. So potentially, but again, like something like that, like narrowing down, yes, he could be a serious option for them or, periphery. Like it's too hard to do right now because so much can happen between now and the offseason.
AJ, we got another super chat here from Kevin Dodgers Guerra. MVP for Mookie or World Series title? My answer, AJ, is how about yes to both of those things, right?
Yes, but if I'm going to be forced to pick, it's not a difficult one.
No.
I love Mookie Betts as much as any Dodger fan, anyone covering the Dodgers, but I want to see another chip.
Yeah. And look, it's easy for us to agree knowing that Mookie Betts would agree with us on this one. He would take the MVP or the World Series. Hey, how about a regular season MVP, a World Series MVP, a playoff MVP, and all of it, Matt?
Yeah, that would work. I will say Mookie did, I think it might have been something that Bill Plunkett wrote for the OC Register, or perhaps Fabian Ardai on The Athletic. One of the two had like a quote from Mookie saying that, an MVP would be cool, but that's not his focus at all.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for the super chats. As always, we'll stop what we're doing and talk about whatever you want us to talk about. If you want to throw us a super chat in there, let's get to some injury updates here. And Matt, I'll come to you. A bunch of names on this list. Gonsolin, Treinen, Kelly, Almonte, Walker Buehler, even a little bit of an update. So I'll just let you go and maybe start wherever you want to start, what you believe to be the most significant there as far as those injury updates.
Yeah, so what Dave Roberts told reporters, I'll start with Walker Buehler, and he's still, there's not necessarily a set date for when he'll begin his rehab assignment. The target sort of return remains kind of middle of September, maybe late September. Most notably, Buehler did advance to pitching multiple innings in simulated games. So he's been facing batters since he first did so when the Dodgers were in Arizona playing the Diamondbacks during that road trip. But he'd been limited to kind of 1 inning each time. So it's good that he's kind of advancing to multiple innings now. Yency Almonte, his knee, his right MCL sprain, still recovering. Dave Roberts said it's probably 2 or 3 weeks away.
And is
Joe
that 2 or 3
Kelly.
weeks away from like him starting to pitch again, or from him potentially being a guy that could be in the? Do we know?
It wasn't entirely clear. My guess is maybe returning.
Okay.
It wasn't fully clear. At least was how I interpreted it. Joe Kelly, he did throw a bullpen session recently. He's still dealing with some discomfort in his elbow, which, Dave did say, like, is he going to be 100% at some point the rest of the season? Potentially not, but there doesn't seem to be any concern as to whether or not he will actually be able to return. So I think that's encouraging. And I think, honestly, with Kelly, like, give him, however, if he needs 2 or 3 more weeks, like, just give it to him. There's plenty of time for him to then come back as a relief pitcher and find his rhythm before the playoffs, which is most important at this point. Now, the biggest one, which I think will segue us into probably our next segment, is Tony Gonsolin.
Yeah.
So at the time that the Dodgers put him on the 15-day IL with the forearm inflammation, the plan was for him to visit Dr. Neil Elatrosh in LA. That was kind of delayed because of some scheduling conflicts. He did finally meet with him. Dave Roberts didn't want to share like what the specifics were, either because it's catastrophic or he said he's not fully aware of the details.
Okay.
I think there's a little bit of both. It's probably 2 things. But what Dave Roberts did say, that there is the potential that Gonsolin will need surgery. And if that is the case, it's going to affect his availability next season.
Okay. Crazy stuff for Gonsolin. And look, I mean, I think some people on Twitter that I've seen, AJ, as far as the Gonsolin piece really quickly here, is there probably needs to be a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is, sympathy for Tony Gonsolin, because if you've read the quotes, and especially looking back on some of the quotes, this is probably a guy who's been pitching injured for the Dodgers for the past few months, if not the entirety of this season. And so while the numbers haven't been great, it feels like there are some underlying reasons why the numbers haven't been great. And for a pitching staff that desperately needed somebody who could take the ball every 5 days, kudos to Tony Gonsolin for doing it. It's just tragic that, again, if you're reading between the lines, and as somebody who's been around baseball and watched it for as long as the 3 of us, like, this feels like Tommy John surgery or something along those lines is coming for Tony Gonsolin, which is just a bummer for a guy that, again, I have a lot of appreciation for just as a person for what he's, put his body through, put his arm through on behalf of the team.
Yeah, it's tough to watch, especially when a lot of people, maybe myself, were a little harsh on him after certain starts. But then it also immediately my brain goes to, well, why did we keep pushing him out there? And I think the answer is the Dodgers didn't have much choice.
Yeah.
And until it got to a point where it was no longer tenable for him to keep pitching. So yeah, you gotta really feel for Tony. He puts his heart and soul out there, and he was an all-star last year, and he had flashes this year of being really, really good. So it at least answers sort of that odd equation that people couldn't figure out, like why beyond his numbers kind of regressing to the mean, because he did always have a very high FIP compared to his ERA. It's because something wasn't right.
Yeah.
It's a shame to see, and we hope he comes back strong.
And to your point, like, maybe it gives you a little bit of optimism that you can, not totally ignore everything we've seen, because to your point, there's been indications that maybe he was getting a little bit lucky prior to this as far as outperforming some metrics. But as I argued with a number of people on Twitter, you don't go from outperforming your metrics by a run and then underperforming your metrics by a run, and all of a sudden it's like the world is right. So tough for Gonsolin, but we'll see. Again, we don't want to overly speculate, but again, I think you can make an educated guess based on Dave Roberts' comments that it's going to be a while. Matt, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, one thing I will say, unfortunately, I'm inclined to agree with you that my suspicion is Tommy John, but considering if we also look back at last year, he had the forearm strain, which could be more flexor tendon than UCL. They did technically, as much as Gonsolin and Dave Roberts have both said he had elbow discomfort, the Dodgers put him on the IL with an official designation of forearm inflammation.
Okay.
So perhaps it's more flexor tendon instead of UCL Tommy John type thing, which I think would be a little bit of a win. But yeah, I mean, we don't want to speculate kind of any further. I'm sure soon enough we'll get some sort of clarity.
Well, the good news is we have our flexor tendon expert on the show. AJ, do you want to fill us in a little bit on the flexor tendon and the time? No, I'm just kidding. All right. One guy I think we were missing, Matt, was Treinen. Do we have an update on Treinen?
Yeah, so I guess that one was separate. He is his rehab assignment began with the Arizona Complex League Dodgers. He pitched in 1 game, 1 inning. He then joined Oklahoma City. I think he's made 2 appearances now. So it seems encouraging, but Dave Roberts also came out and said that he's a long shot to return this season. So I can't compute how that makes sense if your rehab, kind of progresses, if you will, to OKC, but you're still a long shot to return. So yeah, I mean, I guess that one's kind of wait and see.
Yeah, 2 perfect innings for Treinen, by the way. 1 inning, 2 strikeouts in his first appearance. 1 inning, no hits, no walks. It looks like he did hit a batter in the second one. So has not allowed a hit or a walk with 2 strikeouts and 2 innings. But again, to your point, Dave Roberts then comes on and says, it's unlikely to pitch. It's like he's just going to pitch a AAA for the next 45 days. That's the plan with Treinen, I guess. Especially because I believe, Matt, the reports were that the velocity was pretty good, right?
Yeah, his recovery has been very strange. So his first time facing batters was the same day that Walker Buehler did out at Chase Field, and that wasn't necessarily planned. So that was a little bit of a surprise. And so not only was that a surprise, but Dave Roberts said after watching him that his velocity was much higher than they had been seeing in his bullpen sessions and stuff like that. And so at that point in time, Dave said he was more encouraged that Treinen would be coming back, but something happened between, the 2-3 weeks of that simulated game to Treinen where he's at on his rehab assignment that now Dave is not quite as confident. It appears.
I guess we'll have to get the conspiracy theory people on that one on maybe understanding a little bit of what's going on. Anyways, moving on. Speaking of starting pitching for the Dodgers, let's do a little bit of stock watch. 3 young guys that the Dodgers have seen a little bit of over the past week. And I'm curious your guys' perspective on these 3. Let's start with Ryan Pepiot. 2 appearances, 9 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 11 strikeouts for Ryan Pepiot. We've said it a bunch. This guy was the first of all these young pitchers to have made the major leagues a while ago, and yet was the last one to lose his prospect status. He was supposed to be the number, 6 starter, but then number 5 starter when Gonsolin went down before he got injured. Now we've seen him twice. I just read the numbers, more than a strikeout an inning, less than a base runner an inning, just 1 walk, which has kind of been his bugaboo. AJ, give me your thoughts on Pepiot's performance so far in 2 of these kind of long relief type appearances.
Very impressed. I know that the Guardians are not the best hitting team in the majors. Marlins are a little more like middle of the pack, so that was a good comp, or at least something good to see. With Pepiot, I think most people who watched him have agreed if he's throwing strikes, he's going to be successful. The changeup is filthy. Everything else has movement and has good life on it. His Achilles heel was always just throwing strikes, and seeing him do that at least a little more consistently, he jumped my power rankings as far as who do we give a shot to, again, really high. Yeah. Granted, that's a long shot, and I understand, but he was really fun to watch. I was impressed.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, to AJ's point, we've kind of done a roller coaster on, who ranking Dodger pitching prospects. I think Bobby Miller has always been number 1, but I think Gavin Stone was too. And then it was Emmett Sheehan. Now I think Ryan Pepiot has entered the chat in that conversation as well. We're going to get to Stone here in a second, who had, I would say, an encouraging outing today, even though the final line wasn't that great. But any thoughts from you on Ryan Pepiot? I mean, is this a guy that he's expected to get another start this week, whether it's against the Diamondbacks or the Braves, to be determined? But I joked 2 years ago that I think he could be one of the best relievers the Dodgers have with the fastball changeup combo. So now we're looking at a situation where he's probably not going to be in the 4-man pitching or playoff rotation, but could be a guy that could be a long relief weapon or a short relief weapon, honestly.
Yeah, like AJ said, I've been impressed with him this season. I think what's encouraging is we saw him, take a step forward during spring training starts this year from what we saw last season. And now we're seeing that sort of carry over. He's healthy, obviously, and pitching well. I think it makes sense to have him, following an opener as he's done in both his games for the Dodgers. And coincidentally, both of those have also come in a doubleheader setting. That's probably crossing our fingers. That should be changing this weekend. We're getting a heat wave coming in. So I think we'll be okay with rain. So I get, in terms of postseason outlook, probably keeping him in this role of following an opener. But it's also, I don't want to say it's playing with fire a little bit, but look, like injuries happen. Unfortunately, the Dodgers have dealt with a rash of them. So to me, like I would almost rather see Pepiot maybe starting right now, and then in 2 or 3 weeks, then let him start following an opener again to get him used to that role. But if it's just, the only way he's going to be pitching in October is out of the bullpen, then I guess, keep moving along with the arrangement they've been doing.
Yeah, Laura, I see the super chat. We're going to get to your JD Martinez question here momentarily. Let's talk Gavin Stone briefly. 6 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned, no walks, 2 strikeouts is the final line. It is worth pointing out that he came out for a 7th inning, gave up back-to-back home runs, and then was pulled. So at one point, that line was 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, and 2 strikeouts. Matt, I'll start with you on this one. This is a guy that, as I said, was the number 2 pitching prospect in the Dodgers organization coming into the season. He was ahead of Emmett Sheehan. He got to the majors ahead of Bobby Miller. He was believed to be one of the fastest rising guys, one of the most sort of MLB ready guys. And then he got absolutely destroyed at the major league level. And then he went to the minor league level and continued to get destroyed again. For him to make his way back, he gets 1 inning of relief pitcher in front of him and then throws 6 consecutive, again, 3 hits, 2 earned until that last one there. Only 2 strikeouts isn't what you like to see necessarily, but hard not to be encouraged and think, well, maybe maybe it wasn't all a fluke with Gavin Stone coming into the year.
Yeah, I thought it was a great appearance for him. I know he was on the mound and ultimately he gave up those back-to-back home runs. I don't fault him because I don't think he should have been pitching in the 8th inning to begin with. I thought everything we've seen from Dave Roberts and his track record and history, like this completely went against the grain. So it caught me by surprise a little bit. And honestly, even the first home run that he gave up was basically a fly ball to left field that, because they're playing at Fenway, ended up being a home run. So yeah, strikeouts were a little bit down, only the 2, but all things considered, when taking into account what we saw from Gavin Stone the last time he was up with the Dodgers, basically, to now, like, great performance by him.
Yeah, AJ, it's a fun little problem that the Dodgers have because I think Bobby Miller's number 1 in the young pitcher rankings, but I do think there's a real conversation between Pepiot and Sheehan for that number 2 spot. And I think if Gavin Stone gives us another 1 or 2 outings like we saw today, I think he enters right back into the chat in that conversation as well. And now there's a real discussion about those 3. Would you still sort of place yourself in, well, I mean, I don't know where you were. Most people I've talked to had Sheehan at the top of that list 3 or 4 weeks ago. Have you seen enough from Pepiot or from Stone to move ahead of Emmett Sheehan? Did one of those guys stay ahead of Emmett Sheehan? Where are you at with those 3?
I think with Pepiot and Stone, not necessarily just because of performances, but because they plucked Sheehan right out of Double-A. He had very little experience against even Triple-A. I mean, 0 experience against Triple-A hitting, much less big league hitting. And even though he impressed, and I cannot wait to see what the kid does over the next few years, the Dodgers have shown, and most teams, that they will go with experience and who is like properly baked and ready.
Yeah.
In their development kitchen, so to speak. So I could see, I mean, on pure stuff alone, I'm all of a sudden kind of throwing Pepiot at the top.
Yeah.
After Miller, obviously. But Stone looked great. Like you said, a couple of blips. One of them wouldn't be a home run in a real major league stadium built, during the good part of life.
You and Daniel need to get together and you can do your anti-Fenway Park rant.
It's overrated.
Okay, well, I'll put it this way. That's nicer than the words Daniel used, I think, in chat that I was part of. Let's get to Laura's question, and it ties into the Michael Busch conversation. So Laura wants to know, Matt, have we heard any update about JD Martinez? He goes on the injured list earlier this week. Michael Busch was recalled. We'll get into his performance, but do we know anything about a guy who has basically been hurt for the 2 or 3 weeks prior? He just played every 9 or 10 days to keep himself off the injured list?
Yeah, so at the time of going on the IL, the plan was for him to basically not take any swings for about a week. And so we're still within that range. So maybe early this week, he'll start swinging a bat again, maybe hitting off a tee and then some soft toss and then batting practice. But I think they're not in a rush to bring him back. Again, similar to the Joe Kelly thing, JD Martinez is very much an October play. And so I think he does need maybe more time than Kelly would, or like any relief pitcher for that matter, just because hitters need their timing back. And that can be kind of difficult without regular at-bats in major league games. But I don't see him coming back, honestly, for at least another week, maybe to 10 days.
Yeah. Which normally I think we would have said, hey, take your time, JD. Michael Busch is down in AAA and he continues to rake. Well, Michael Busch is at the major league level and he continues to not rake at the major league level. After today's game, I've got him as 1 for 14 since coming back up. Now, the one was a home run, so he's got that under his belt. 1 for 14 with 1 walk and 5 strikeouts. Look, a bunch of us, Matt, we're clamoring for this guy to come back up. What are you doing? He keeps hitting at the some guys can't cut it at the major league level. I'm not saying Michael Busch will forever be a guy who can't cut it at the major league level, but he would not be the first top 50 prospect to OPS 1100 at AAA and not be able to make it. And so I'll admit, the first time around, I had a bunch of excuses baked in. Oh, he's not playing consistently. They're screwing with his position, whatever. He was on an absolute heater at AAA. He comes up to the major league level. He's playing pretty consistently, and he's 1 for 14 with a home run and 5 strikeouts. And it's not even like the at-bat quality is that good. Like, I'm not saying it's a forever no. I'm just saying maybe I should have given the Dodgers a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt as to why this guy was at AAA, Matt.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation to me. I think when he first came up, like you said, some of the factors going into his starts and all that could be taken into account. I think now some of that is eliminated, but there's also a case maybe to be made that he might not be comfortable as a DH. And it can't necessarily be an excuse because it is your role. And like if you want an opportunity with this team, like you kind of have to take it however it comes. But considering what we've seen, what I don't want to completely sidetrack this conversation. I want AJ to make sure he gets a chance to talk to is I just sort of feel like, did the Dodgers miss the boat then with not trading Busch at this deadline when his value arguably was at its highest it's going to ever be?
Yeah. I mean, I still think there's going to be value. Like he's still moving up prospect rankings lists seemingly across the industry. Part of that is because of graduation. So, and I see some people in the chat saying, hey, maybe he hasn't been getting consistent at bats. I mean, he played the 22nd. He started the 24th. He started the 25th and he started the 27th. So that's 2 off days in a 5-day stretch. I don't know. AJ, it looked like you were disagreeing with my assessment, or were you shaking your head at Michael Busch's disappointing performance?
I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but actually neither.
Okay.
I was lamenting JD Martinez falling apart like paper mache and being roasted by the entirety of Dodgers social media when I said Justin Turner would have a better season and a longer season and play more games overall. And he is well past him in WAR, and he now is well past Martinez in Ops Plus. And he hit tanks against us. But I'm not too worried about Busch.
Okay.
If I want to stay on topic, some Dodger guys like Outman, Bellinger, you remember, come to the big leagues and just start smoking the ball.
Yeah.
But a lot of superstars that we now consider household names and own bobbleheads, like, don't come to the big leagues and start smoking the ball immediately. Yeah. Maybe the adrenaline, maybe that whole thing was just too high. And you never know. In a week, if JD Martinez is still on the rack, Busch might find it. He might just start. He might get more patient in the box. Something might happen. So is it disappointing to see what we've seen from Busch, especially considering Matt's point about, like, why didn't they possibly trade him to get the most value out of him? Like, for sure, of course. But I'm not, like you guys said too, I'm not giving away the ghost on him. I think he still could be a terrific lefty hitter.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm pessimistic on his ability to do anything this year. Like it feels like, they got to figure something out, some way to get him more comfortable at the major league level would be my assessment. We got another super chat here from Andrea. Thoughts on surpassing the Braves for the number 1 seed? Is it worth the advantage considering 111 wins didn't mean we went far in the playoffs in 2022? Last I looked as we recorded this, did the Braves end up losing tonight?
They did.
They did lose. So I believe the Dodgers are 4 games back of the Braves for the best record in the National League. I'll double check that real quick. Yes, 4 games back even of the Braves. Here's what I would say, Andrea. I don't think because the Dodgers lost last year, it means that being the number 1 seed is something that the Dodgers should not care about. I think having home field advantage is a significant thing. If you look at the Dodgers and how they've performed, they're 43-21 at home. They're 37-28 on the road. That's a massive discrepancy. Yes, they're going to be playing better teams in the playoffs, but clearly the Dodgers prefer to play at home. So I would say, quote unquote, go for it. I think with baseball, you don't really rest guys for like weeks at a time and save them up because guys need regular at bat, pitchers need regular opportunities. So I think the Dodgers are going to go for it. Matt, as we sit here, we've got a 4-game series we're going to preview here in just a few moments. I'll do a rapid fire with you and AJ to answer Andrea's question. Do you think the Dodgers will pass the Braves for the number 1 seed?
Can I answer this a week from tonight after they
No.
after they've played the 4-game series?
You can answer it again a week from tonight for a second time.
Okay. I don't think they catch them.
Okay.
They get close, but I don't think they do.
AJ?
I think they get close. I don't think they quite catch them, and that isn't a knock on our Dodgers. The Braves are just good, man. They're really good.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. I mean, 4 games, like I know there's a decent amount. We got 33 games to go, but 4 games isn't nothing. I mean, the Braves continue. They've won 7 of their last 10. So if the Braves continue winning at the pace they're winning at, the Dodgers are going to have to win 75% of their games from here on out to catch them. And I do think that we're going to get to the end and the Dodgers are going to be able to take their foot off the pedal as much as you can in a major league season. So, yeah. And Andrea, Laura, Kevin, Michael, thank you for the super chats as always. We are going to get to that Braves series preview here in just a moment, but let's talk Alex Verdugo briefly and maybe not so briefly because I think this kind of warrants a bigger conversation. For those unfamiliar, the Dodgers, of course, were in Boston this past weekend, the site of maybe one of the more lopsided trades in Major League history when the Red Sox sent Mookie Betts to the Dodgers in exchange for Alex Verdugo, who at the time was a top 50 to 75 prospect in Major League Baseball and was already at the Major League level, Jeter Downs, who was a top 100 prospect, and Connor Wong, who was kind of a throw-in to the trade. The Dodgers got Mookie Betts as well as David Price's contract. Mookie Betts, as we talked earlier, and have talked multiple times on the show, is the leading candidate for MVP right now. Meanwhile, Alex Verdugo is a slightly above average offensive player who has a questionable reputation in clubhouses, and that's where we're at. Why we bring all of this up is because Alex Verdugo had a quote that I would say is a quote for the ages. He did hit 2 home runs in this series. He led off Friday and Saturday with home runs, so I'll give him that credit. But this is what he said when asked about the trade. Quote, "It ain't as washed of a trade as what people try to always make it seem." That was end quote from Verdugo. It ain't as washed of a trade as what people try to always make it seem. It's worth noting Jeter Downs, who is the second top 100 prospect included, was recently DFA'd by the Red Sox, claimed by the Nationals, and has since been optioned to AAA by them. Connor Wong is a 89 weighted runs created plus catcher who's solid defensively. So sure, 1-win player, Connor Wong. AJ, I'll come to you first. He says this trade wasn't that bad. Mookie Betts, again, currently the favorite for MVP. Alex Verdugo, a slightly above average offensive player who has been benched twice this year.
I think Matt is going to have the more solid, subsistent, based on facts answer. I will just give a little bit of Dodger trivia. I don't know if you guys remember when Doogie was on the Dodgers, he used Volver Volver as his walk-up song. I mean, let's just say it's like one of the Mexican national anthems. Like when that song comes on, everyone in my family, myself included, we start singing. We start. Let me tell you the chorus if I were translated to English. And going back to your arms once again. I know I'll get back to where you are. I know how to lose. I know how to lose. I want to go back. I want to go back. That's Verdugo, and I think I'm done here.
Matt, any song lyrics for us?
No song lyrics. I left that to AJ. I can understand where Verdugo's coming from as like a competitor standpoint. Like, you don't want to always hear like, hey, you were part of a terrible trade. Like the team you're on, like just got fleeced. So I get the sentiment. I just think that objectively looking at it, like it was an awful trade for the Red Sox. Yeah. And if we want to take things a step further, remember it was supposed to be a 3-team trade with the Twins, Dodgers, and Red Sox, with Brusdar Graterol going to Boston originally. Yeah. And I forgot all the specifics of that trade, but what I do remember is the Red Sox were getting crushed by every national media, everybody. How is that the return for Mookie Betts? And, David Price, whatever you think of him at the time, like he was still a name. And so then it fell apart because remember, like the Red Sox claimed, we have some concerns about Graterol's medical history, this, that, and the other. so that the 3-team trade fell apart. The Dodgers end up saying, okay, like, give us Gratterall. They end up doing the 2 separate trades.
Yeah.
And even at the time, it just wasn't, the rework deal still like was obviously tilted in favor of the Dodgers. And that's how, most trades are whenever prospects are involved, right? Like the team acquiring a prospect, like you are sort of banking on their potential and what you hope they'll become. And that doesn't always happen. Like we just talked about with Michael Busch. Like sometimes these top prospects are great in the minor leagues and they just don't pan out. Verdugo is a solid player at the major league level. But we're talking about, Mookie Betts, who's not even just like a perennial all-star. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he's going to go down as one of the best players that the game has ever seen. And so unless, again, objectively speaking, you're producing at that level or close to it, like the trade, especially when the complementary pieces, as you highlighted, Jeter Downs is no longer there. Connor Wong is a bench player. They're not, upholding their end of the bargain necessarily. They didn't pan out. So it basically does look at like Verdugo for Mookie Betts. And when you put their stats next to each other, like objectively speaking, like it answers the question.
Yeah, what Verdugo needs to realize, and I understand as a competitor why you won't be able to say this, like, even if Alex Verdugo were a fringe all-star, this would be a total like what he would need to be as a player for this to be an accurate statement that this trade isn't washed is like 4 times the player that he currently is. Like the number of guys who could get traded straight up for Mookie Betts, and this would be true, it ain't as washed of a trade as what people try to always make it seem, is like there's probably 25 dudes in all of Major League Baseball that like, and again, I'm saying because, he's a young guy and you don't have to pay him and he's team control, like that kind of stuff. So I understand why he perceives it as an insult and it is partly due to him, but realistically, people bashing the trade has way more to do with Jeter Downs being a zero, not even with the organization. I mean, obviously Verdugo is underperforming, but if I were Verdugo, every single day I'd be telling myself, hey, it ain't my problem. Like I'm still here at the major league level. I've got a 110 rated runs created plus. Like I still have some upside. I'm still here for a few more years. So if you want to bash the trade, like A, I didn't make it. B, I'm like 75% of what was expected of me. Like I'm not a total zero. So I think that's the part that I love about. Like I just wouldn't take it personally. I'd be like, yeah, that trade sucked, and man, Jeter Downs sucks, huh? Like that guy should have been better. That kind of thing. AJ, do you want to add to that?
No, I think you guys nailed it. Like Verdugo's fine. Like you said, he's got an ops plus of like 113, which is the highest of his career in a full season anyway. I felt like my comment was, meant to be sort of poetic and funny, but like he's a good player.
Yeah.
Jeter Downs has been disappointing, but we're talking about Mookie Betts. They traded him because they didn't want to pay him. They got rid of David Price because they didn't want him on their payroll so that they could reset. They just traded him because they didn't want to pay him. And of course, Verdugo is going to feel like this. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think another thing too is as much as like I am making some, I guess you could say some excuse for Verdugo a little bit, but also like he does need to take some ownership for there were some maturity issues while he was here with the Dodgers. And like you mentioned, he's also been benched twice with Boston. Yep. And so like those are your actions. That's stuff that like you've kind of created a perception of yourself because of how you've behaved. And so, I liked him when he was with the Dodgers. I thought, he is talented. He is a talented baseball player. And I think he could continue to develop. Like his career isn't done. But again, short of Verdugo, like morphing into a perennial all-star, superstar type player, like this trade is forever going to be viewed as skewed heavily in the Dodgers' favor, especially when you layer on the fact that they then won the World Series in Mookie Betts' first season with the team and kind of the important role, the memorable highlights that he played in that. Like, it wasn't like he was just, along for the ride.
Yeah. So Verdugo, since coming to Boston, 2020 was the first year. So that was a shortened season. And obviously we haven't finished this year. So let's just call it 3 full seasons. It's slightly more than 3 seasons, but 3 full seasons since Verdugo has been at Boston. And he's played, 53 out of 60 games, 146 out of 162, 152, 117. So he has been healthy. In all of those seasons, he has combined, according to Fangraphs, for 7.6 wins above replacement in 3 full seasons. Right now, this season, Mookie Betts has 7.1 in 122 games. So We could go backwards. There was a 6.6 put up by Mookie last year and a 3.9 the year before that, and 2.8 the year before that. So, that's a tough one for Verdugo to wear. But, again, to say that trade is not washed when Mookie Betts this year has basically put up the same amount of value that Verdugo has put up in 3+ seasons total. And last year, Mookie had 6.6. I think we can all agree, and Matt, maybe you're a little hesitant to say this, this quote is crazy. This trade ain't as washed of a trade as what people try to always make it seem. Matt, I would argue this trade is more washed of a trade than maybe anybody realizes, because I don't think most people realize that Jeter Downs was the second biggest piece and has been DFA'd by the Red Sox. I think this trade is far worse, and people are going to say, oh, the Dodgers took the Price's contract. Oh, they didn't know they were going to re-sign Mookie. Sure. But here we are. They did re-sign Mookie, and David Price, they paid him. It's more watched of a trade than I think. I still have people in my life who defend this trade. Oh, that he wasn't going to sign. Well, it's more watched of a trade than I think it actually gets credit for.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, I definitely think the Jeter Downs detail, I had forgotten that he was. I remember when it happened, seeing that he was no longer with the Red Sox organization, but I had forgotten until reading about Verdugo's comments and then looking back on the trade and stuff that, yeah, that's right. He ended up with the Nationals. Now he's not even on their major league roster right now. I think honestly, it's the biggest indictment on the Red Sox franchise and their front office.
Yeah.
100%. With Mookie going back to Boston this past weekend, it kind of brought up the contract negotiation stuff again. And he really sidestepped. He said, I don't want to discuss it if Chaim Bloom or the Red Sox owner want to, they can, but I'll just leave it at that. So I know there's a lot of consternation on how those negotiations went, maybe what was offered, how much was offered, was it offered? But I think really it's an indictment on the Red Sox, right? Again, Verdugo, like you said, he could look at the rest of the trade pieces and say, hey, I'm doing my part. Where's everybody else? But ultimately the Red Sox front office, they didn't get enough.
Yeah. Short
of, again, even if Verdugo had maybe panned out a little bit more, what were the odds that Jeter Downs and or Connor Wong were also going to be, all-star level players? And so that's probably where the majority of the blame, I think, falls and has sort of gone. But again, I understand why, Verdugo, he gets asked about it because he was the centerpiece.
He's the only guy left.
And he's the only guy left. Yeah.
Yeah. No disrespect to Connor Wong. But hey, there you go. Shout out to the Dodgers, Andrew Friedman, always winning. All right. Let's move on, and we'll close the show before we get to some questions. Let's talk Braves. I kind of hinted at it. Massive series. We don't want to overlook the Diamondbacks, the second place Arizona Diamondbacks, 12 games back in the National League West. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there is a 4-game set with the best record in the National League, Atlanta Braves, looming. And I know Dodgers fans, based on our interactions with them in the comments and on Twitter, have had this series circled for a long time. As I said, they're currently 4 games back of the Braves for the best record in the National League. What's interesting is that I wanted to do a little bit on the pitching matchups, but for the Dodgers, there's a bit of mystery as far as how they're going to shake out the starting rotation. What I mean is, if you look at the probables, ESPN kind of does a better job of projecting it, whereas MLB.com doesn't put anything up until it's official. But the Dodgers have an open spot this week that they could mix and match. They could put Pepiot early in the week, for example, and Pepiot could pitch Wednesday, which would give Lance Lynn and Julio Urias an extra day of rest. And then you would have Lance Lynn, Julio, Bobby Miller, and Clayton Kershaw, your 4 best pitchers pitching against the Braves. Or you could have Lance Lynn pitch on normal rest, which means that Lynn would not face the Braves, and then you would get Julio, Pepiot, Bobby Miller, and Clayton Kershaw. So for what it's worth, on the Braves end, we have a pretty good sense of who's going to be pitching against them. Max Fried, Jared Schuster, who was recalled today from AAA, would be in line to start if he makes another start. Then Bryce Elder and Charlie Morton. Before I get into some nerdy pitching stuff, let's be brief on this one, AJ, but it's a regular season series. It's technically starting August 31st and then dipping into September. So we're almost to September here. How much do you really care about this series, AJ?
A lot.
Okay.
If I'm being honest.
We hope you would be honest. We like when you're honest, AJ, so I appreciate that.
The Braves are scary, man. They don't have holes.
Yeah.
They have 4 different pitchers whose ERA plus is well over 100. Their bullpen, same thing. They have just hitters who mash. I mean, if we're not talking Will Smith, Sean Murphy's the best catcher in the National League, maybe in the majors. And that's not where we haven't even touched on Acuna and Olsen and Austin Riley, whose star was on the rise, who used to be there, who maybe last year was like their big star. We don't even talk about him anymore. And he's got 30 home runs. They're scary. And I think the Dodgers putting up any kind of fight in this series upcoming, whether it's splitting it, winning all 4, 3-1, or even just competing in every game, it matters because it's a preview. And it shows, I think, where their mettle is. Like, I don't know where our friend is with the gritty Dodgers, but like if they can be gritty in this series against the team to beat, in my opinion, most people's opinion, to get to the World Series, then we can start talking about how good this team is, in my opinion.
Matt, I'm trying to use my history with you to gauge. Part of me thinks you're going to tell me it's August 31st. Who cares? It's a regular season series. But, you've got a little old school in you as well. It's like, hey, I want to see these guys go toe-to-toe. So where do you land? AJ says he cares a lot about how this series plays out.
I'm more interested to see how it plays out than I care how it plays out, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, look, like if the Dodgers were to lose all 4, if they get swept, then there'd be some serious concerns. I'm not expecting that.
I'm sure Dodgers fans would handle it well, Matt. Like our comments on Sunday night would be super calm and measured, I think.
Absolutely.
Blake would be on here. Blake would be on here with his bucket hat on and a big old grin on his face, though.
I'm expecting a split. But more than anything, I'm just intrigued. I want to see, the Dodgers are playing well. Braves are also playing well. I just hope it's 4 good baseball games of, 2, dare I say, elite teams going at it. And so, let's just see kind of how the chips fall. And if the Dodgers, again, I think the only thing that would get me concerned is if the Dodgers lose all 4 games. If they lose 3-1, depending on how it happens, of course, like not too panicky. But yeah, I'm more interested to see how the series unfolds than I actually care about the results and it being a predictor for the future.
Yeah, we'll have a full preview, by the way, on our YouTube page on Thursday. Jeff Erickson, who's one of the best in the business on fantasy baseball and that kind of thing. He's the head guy over at RotoWire. He joins us just about every weekend to preview stuff. So we're going to be doing that on Thursday. So make sure you're subscribed to the Dodger Blue page to catch that right here on YouTube. Briefly, the pitching matchup, Max Fried is on the mound. Like I said, expected to be on the mound on Thursday. Whether he's facing Lance Lynn or Julio Urias to be determined. He was out for a while since coming back, 5 starts, 3.5 ERA, but has allowed a bunch of base runners, 37 base runners in 27 2/3. He's actually been worse. His first start back was good. His last 4 starts, 21 2/3 innings, 11 earned, and 34 base runners allowed. So maybe a good time to catch Max Fried there, something to keep an eye on. Max Muncy, by the way, 3 for 6 in his career with a home run off of Max Fried. But Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, a combined 2 for 15 with 9 strikeouts. So that might be the test of how big of a heater Mookie is on. Can he snap out of a 1 for 9 with 5 strikeouts against Max Fried? I mentioned Jared Schuster technically pitched it, or he did pitch today, technically would be in line to make that start for the Braves if they went that route. He had an 8.5 ERA coming into the day, a 3.5 ERA down at AAA. Bryce Elder would be third. 2 starts at the beginning of the month where he allowed 5 earned runs apiece. His last 2 starts, though, have been good, 12 1/3, 1 earned run. He and Morton both faced the Dodgers. Elder was good, 6 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts against them. Morton, on the other hand, was not good, 5 innings, 6 earned runs in May against the Dodgers. But Morton is the hottest pitcher of the whole bunch coming into this one. Coming into today, 18 innings, no earned runs his last 3 starts. He's actually struck out 21 batters his last 2 starts compared to just 2 walks. So to AJ's point, pitching is maybe the one thing that you could kind of point to with the Braves and have questions about. But if Charlie Morton turns the corner, if Max Fried snaps back into form, all of a sudden you've got the makings of an interesting one. I like to put people on the spot, so I will. AJ, give me a prediction. 4 games against the Braves this weekend. How many do the Dodgers win? Full numbers only, please.
I'm going split.
2-2. Okay, Matt?
I'll go 3-1 Dodgers.
Wow, I
Ooh.
smell the 3-1 Braves coming out of you. I'm proud of you for that one. I'm going 3-1 Dodgers too, baby. Hottest team in baseball. They ain't going to be scared. Coming to the Braves, coming all the way to the West Coast. Dodgers take 3 out of 4. I would love if Lynn, Julio, Miller, Kershaw is the group. I mean, I could see why there might be value in not wanting the Braves to see some of these guys, but kind of just a power move. Like, yeah, we're throwing our dudes. We're pushing Lance Lynn back a day, giving Julio an extra day of rest. Like, we're ready to roll.
And it wouldn't be completely unprecedented. They've done that. They did that last year when they were matching up with the Padres during the regular season. And so, in the Dodgers, just, kind of spitballing here, maybe they view this upcoming series as kind of the final push. If we could take 3 out of 4 or somehow sweep it, then we're going to, really go for the number 1 seed in the National League. If not, then, let the chips fall where they may.
I don't think the Dodgers need to worry about matching pitchers up against the Padres this year. Let me check. I'll check the standings real quick to double check that. But yeah, I think they can steer clear of having to worry about that. All right, let's get to some odds and ends, and then we will get to some questions here. So you want to start throwing some questions in the chat, all caps questions. Get those in. Freddie Freeman, Matt, you mentioned this, is now the Dodgers record holder, I believe, single season for doubles in a season. Is that right?
LA Dodgers record holder. So not quite.
No disrespect to Brooklyn.
Yeah, not quite franchise overall Brooklyn. I think he's 3 away from passing that one, or maybe a handful. I forgot what that number is. But yeah, I mean, he just broke Sean Green's LA Dodgers record. Freeman is on pace for 63 doubles this season. So that would end up breaking the all-time franchise record for sure.
If Blake were here, AJ, he would just say it's because he doesn't have enough power to get those balls out of the yard, I think. Would you agree, AJ?
No, I don't agree. He's just an elite hitter. He doesn't have to hit balls out of the yard all the time. This company doesn't do stuff like that, but man, what a missed opportunity with in and out and a double Freddie Freeman promotion.
Well, they do sponsor, don't they? They sponsor something with Sportsnet LA, I think. So
well, then they're really missing out if they're already halfway there.
Maybe they don't do player sponsorships.
Maybe.
Look, what's happening here is AJ's trying to wipe away the memory of him taking Jack in the Box over In and Out. We see through your ruse, AJ. We see what you're trying to do.
Second odds and ends piece here. Briefly, AJ, I'll come to you. Cool moment for Mookie Betts coming back to Boston, getting the ovation. I know Matt is proud of Major League Baseball for not calling a pitch clock violation on Mookie Betts when he took off the helmet there. But I just thought we did a post-game show that night, and I just thought that was a great moment for Mookie, for baseball, for the Dodgers. So shout out to Boston, their fans, everybody for making that happen.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Boston known for having wonderful fans. I'm trying to be sarcastic here, but I guess it's not coming out.
I wasn't sure.
No, I mean, for real, like tip your cap to the Boston fans as well. And like Matt was, like you said, Matt said, like, for not calling a stupid pitch clock violation, reading the room, understanding that moment. And kudos to the Boston fans, too, for understanding that. And to be fair to them, which I can't believe I'm doing for Boston fans, it does kind of speak to why they're so defensive about the Mookie trade. It's because they know their franchise gave away a guy you build a statue to, and they miss him. And it was a cool moment for sure.
Yeah. Last odds and ends.
I have a follow-up for AJ, really. What's better, Fenway Park or Red Sox fans?
They're like the same.
Or Dodger dogs.
I'm fully in the Dodger dogs are not terrible. They're not good. They're just fine.
Okay, there we go.
Let's move on.
They're fine.
All right. We're going to get to some questions here. I have one for you guys. As I mentioned, I was home in Los Angeles at my parents' house, and they are getting ready to move, so I had to clean some stuff out. So I've got some new bobbleheads behind me. Not that anybody can see from that far away, but I do have some new bobbleheads back there, which I'm very excited about. New, meaning old bobbleheads. And as I was going through, the ones that were at my parents' house were like 80% bobbleheads that were intentionally left behind. Very random players. I think I had multiple Cesar Tourist ones. I think there was a Jonathan Broxton, Brian Jordan one. Be on the lookout. I gave them all to Scott and Blake, and so we're going to try and do a live video where they draft who gets which bobblehead. So stay tuned for that on the Dodger page. But as I was going through, I want to know, Matt and AJ, who is like a random Dodger? Wasn't here for a super long time, maybe wasn't like an all-star necessarily while he was here, but who, if you had a bobblehead and had limited space, and I know some people would say that's not limited space, but it's less space than I have bobbleheads, that you would say, you know what, I'm going to make room on the shelf for this player. Matt, I'll start with you. Does anybody come to mind? I know you're going to criticize mine because I hinted at it already to you, but before we get to critiquing my answer here, I'm curious to hear yours.
Yeah, so I had an answer, but then when you throw in the bobblehead component, I'm not sure if it necessarily qualifies. So if it's just like kind of random Dodger who I thought
who you liked, you like rooting
I
for.
think okay. So is David Freese? Is that a good answer?
Sure. Yeah, that's
Okay.
super random.
Okay, there. I thought he was funny. He had the clutch gene that I value in players. I'm just not sure. Like, I don't know if, David Freese bobblehead would really jump off the screen. But in terms of a random, maybe player that you sort of like, that's my choice.
AJ?
Okay, so I have a player. You're both probably going to say not random enough. And if that's the case, I totally accept it. I have a backup, much more random. Look at my last name. Look at the players that I'm really proud of. Look at the flag hanging off my guitar amp. I'm going to go with
not random enough.
I'm gonna go with AJ Gonzalez. If that's not all right,
not at all. Not
all
at
right,
all.
fine. All right.
He was how many All-Star games did he make as a Dodger? I gotta look this up.
Okay, I see you then. I'll go even older for the olds in the chat. Ismael Valdez.
Okay,
there we go. That's good.
That qualifies for sure.
Another Mexican Dodger.
There we go.
There you go. I'm looking this up. Let's see, one All-Star appearance as a Dodger for Adrian Gonzalez. Finished 7th in MVP voting one year, and has a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger as a Dodger. To be fair, that was in 6 seasons, but I just think he was like a very prominent player. Now, I say all this, and Matt is going to mock my pick because the guy that I chose, whose bobblehead you can't really see, he made it on the Manny Ramirez, Yasiel Puig, and then hiding right here, back in this little corner, is Hanley Ramirez. I freaking loved Hanley Ramirez. Matt, you say that doesn't qualify as random, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, not random. It's not quite as bad as AJ trying to sneak in Adrian Gonzalez, but Hanley also was very talented, a big name. So I know his time in LA was relatively brief, but I don't think it, qualifies enough as random. But we're not necessarily seeing a ton of pushback in the chat, so maybe you're going to be able to get away with that one.
Yeah, I'm looking through some of these answers here. D. Gordon.
Do you want to justify your bad selection? The guy who ruined Clayton Kershaw's perfect game.
I brought that up at our dinner the other night when you mentioned Hanley Ramirez, and that's the exact point I brought up.
Yeah, so that qualifies him as random, I think. There you go. He's not well like Russell Martin. The Russell Martin bobblehead.
That's a good
the
one.
Russell Martin bobblehead got donated to Blake and Scott. In case anyone was wondering, Odalis Perez, legendary.
That's a
Mickey
great
Hatcher,
one.
Beyond Me a little bit. Darryl Strawberry, Brett Butler. That's a great one. I saw Eric Steven again. He had the comment about Mookie having 35 hits, and then he said the last guy to have that many hits in whatever the stretch was him, and he said like 23 of the 35 were infield hits or something for Butler. Just insane. James Loney, another bobblehead that definitely got donated. So shout out to James Loney. I thought that guy was going to be a stud, and he was just a no power, solid defense guy who hit like 270, which is not what you want as a first baseman. Dave.
I saw that one scrolling through.
Dodgers of all time, Shane Victorino. Sorry, Dave.
You can't say that name in my house. Like married to a Phillies fan. Like you can say Chase Utley. You can say.
Do Phillies fans like him?
They don't. So I was at the Phillies game today. I saw lots of old Phillies. You see Schmidt. You see Howard still. You see tons of Utley. J-Roll. You even see I even saw a ton of Brad Lidge. Not a single Victorino. So I don't know.
Who likes him then? Like if they don't, like if the Phillies fans don't like him, I don't know who does like him. So there you go. Dong's got Hesop Choi, famous for
I like
making he was in the home run derby one year. So shout out to Hesop Choi. Hanser Alberto. No, you get some Ismael Valdez getting some love. Mondesi, I would say not random enough. That guy was a beast. I do have
Rookie of the year.
just out of reach. I've got a Mondesi little thing. I have these little figurines that I found down here, and it's got Sean Green, Adrian Beltre, Kevin Brown. Freaking love me some Kevin Brown. I believe it's Darren Dreifert, Chan-Ho Park. And Eric Karros. That was the other one. I wasn't a Karros guy. Ethier, I would say, again, not random enough. Although I have a great bobblehead of Ethier and the Powder Blues. So that one
fan favorite. A huge fan favorite, Andre Ethier.
Yeah. Chad Billingsley. Are there people that love Chad Billingsley? That would be, he was solid.
Enough.
Yeah,
Milton Bradley.
I'm also seeing
Milton Bradley.
Hung-Chi Kuo. I've got a Hung-Chi Kuo bobblehead on the ledge over here. I love me some Hung-Chi Kuo, but middle relievers. Dreifert. Go ahead, Matt.
Give Dave some credit. He said he was just trolling with his Shane Victorino pick, so at least we don't.
Good.
We can...
I haven't gotten to that comment, Dave, so I appreciate it. Jose Lima. I was at the playoff game that he won. So RIP Jose Lima, always a legend. There is no way Kimberly likes Blake DeWitt. There's 0% chance that this is a real comment of like, no, I'm a big Blake DeWitt fan. Cesar Esturris, I get that. Again, Delino DeShields, Delino DeShields is known for all of the wrong reasons. Might have been a fine player, but
what about Yency Brazaban?
He could throw heat. Yep. We got Ramon Martinez. That guy was a beast. Jimmy Rollins, fine. Leduca, that was my grandma's favorite player. That bobblehead did not make it to my house either. That's in the Blake and Scott draft coming up. Nomar, would Nomar have qualified as random enough? I mean, he was like very, if not for everything Nomar did before being a Dodger, he would definitely have been random, right?
Yeah, I think it was late enough in his career that this could slide, but I mean, he's
also an LA native, so it's kind of hard.
That's true.
Yeah. We've got this one, and I've got to do a shout out. The Tornado. We've got the Nomo Tornado back to the so shout out Nomo. That one definitely made it. I did like Milton Bradley. Guilty there. So these are good. JD Drew. I think people are just trying to name the most random. There's no way. Kimberly Adams, this has got to be a troll account because Reddick is the next one here. No. Dong, Jeff Kent, good Lord. These are people not allowed. Exactly. They're definitely. Rod Barajas just got mentioned. So we need to move on from this conversation. Let's get to some questions here. I know we've run long, but we've got about 5 or 6 minutes for some real questions here. If we get desperate, I've got a food question that I thought of a couple hours ago, which, if you know Matt and AJ, is a great thing. I will say this, AJ, I have to ask you. So Matt and Blake and I, and again, start putting your questions in there. We went to dinner in LA the other night. Nice place. And it was like a very random place because they had items on the menu from like every cultural, ethnic, sort of group imaginable. So I didn't realize at the time, but so we ordered a couple appetizers. One of them was a guacamole dish. The other one was
truffle fries.
Truffle fries. So we ordered those two. As a side, they had deep fried mashed potatoes, which were basically mashed potatoes in an egg roll. Basically what it was. So that is its own deal. I ordered Indian food for dinner. So that was my combo. I went chips and guacamole to Indian food with mashed potatoes in an egg roll wrapper mixed in, followed by apple pie for dessert. I actually don't have an issue with that. It seemed weirder to me than it actually was, but AJ, since you're a food guy here, do you have any thoughts on mixing all of those things in one table setting? It was not Cheesecake Factory, by the way, for the person asking. That's a fair guess.
With not having other information at my disposal and not wanting to monopolize the time we have left, it greatly depends on the quality of the restaurant. Because a lot of times, if I hear that the restaurant has that much food, I think of fusion confusion.
Yeah.
But if all the quality of the items you ordered were good, I'm not big on bashing people for ordering a mishmash of stuff. If it's quality, unless we're talking health concerns, why did you order everything with deep fried potato, blah, blah, blah. No, I think that's kind of fun, actually. It's like family meal almost.
Yeah. And by the way, to people saying Indian food is not good in the chat, you got to.
Well, they're wrong.
American Indian food. I mean, the Indian food you probably have tasted, I agree with you, is probably not very good. But real Indian food is absolutely elite. So, Joey DTLA, that was the name of the place we went to. And it was good. It was good. Parking's incredibly expensive everywhere around there. Don't forget to get your parking validated. We almost made that mistake. Blake and I had to make a second trip, walk down to the restaurant to get that. We punched it in, and I was like, I don't know. And it was like $39. I'm like, we're definitely getting this validated. So brought it down to about $2. But let's get to a few more questions here. I'm going to scroll up here because I did see some questions above. Patience. Michael asks, should Austin Barnes be playing more to get ready for the playoffs and give Will Smith more rest? Will Smith's been in a slump. He's middle of the pack as far as games played. Like Will Smith is not playing a ton of games, so it's not like he should be worn down necessarily. Matt, as the president of Austin Barnes Island, I'll let you answer this.
I don't think so. I mean, I think Barnes playing basically 2 times a week is fine. And considering, like you said, Will Smith is in a slump, I don't think it's a rest issue. And so let's have him, kind of continue getting obviously regular at bats, as many at bats as possible to sort of find his rhythm again before the playoffs.
Yeah. I kind of am like, sure. I mean, now that they're 12 games up, now is the time when Austin Barnes playing every once in a while is not going to bug me nearly as much because the games don't really matter as much. And so if you really do feel like Will Smith is wearing down and that's why he's slumping, then sure, start giving Austin Barnes more playing time. On the flip side, if you want Will Smith to hit himself out of his slump, maybe Austin Barnes should be playing less. So I guess when the Dodgers have a 12-game lead in the division, I care way less about how often Austin Barnes plays. That's my answer. AJ, any thoughts?
I don't mind him playing an extra game or 2 a week. Maybe, Dave Roberts and the boys are good at like structuring where, you give Austin Barnes a start right before an off day. So Will has like 2 or 3 straight days. It's not the worst idea. Like you said, we're up how many games in the division, and Barnes has shown a few signs of life with the bat. Why not? Catching is a thankless and exhausting position. And of course, Smith's going to find those slumps. It can't hurt. At this point, it can't hurt. We're up.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's get to some questions. Ederico asked this. I don't have a great answer, so I'll ask. I don't know if anyone comes to mind for you. He said, now that Fernando has had his jersey retired, who should be the next Dodger honored with a retirement? Obviously, Oral Hershiser and Fernando both recently honored. Matt, does anybody come to mind for you? I mean, the Dodgers basically have a history of only adding Hall of Famers, Fernando being one of 2 exceptions to that rule. So it kind of would be like, who's the next Dodger to go into the Hall of Fame, I guess, right?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see this as being any sort of precedent for retiring numbers for players who aren't in the Hall of Fame. I think Fernando's situation was unique in the sense that they also, I think, evaluated and took into account the cultural impact he had at the time and still has with the fan base. And so I think that was a fact. I mean, look, he was also very good and played a key part in them winning World Series, obviously, but I think that was part of it. If they were to sort of, stretch it again a little bit, I could see maybe Oral Hershiser getting in. I know that he arguably has maybe some case for the Hall of Fame if you look at certain statistics. And I mean, I personally just don't get too wrapped up in this, and definitely not the Hall of Fame stuff, because I think it's subjective, it's changed, and so it's just not worth worrying about.
Yeah, fair. All right, I'll ask you guys one food question, and we'll get out of here with this one. I was thinking about this. Don't ask me why I was thinking about this, but if you can add 3 things to a plate of nachos, and I'm assuming cheese and chips are already just on the table, give me your 3 things that you're throwing on top of your nachos. AJ, you want to go first?
Carne asada, jalapenos, and anyone who knows Mexican food knows this is a mixture of 2. I'm not cheating. Cilantro, onion.
Okay. Matt?
Would extra cheese count as one topping, or can we already just make sure that it's on there?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. These are good nachos. There's plenty of cheese.
All right. I'll do sour cream. Probably a salsa.
Okay. Are we going pico de gallo, or what kind of salsa?
No. It needs to be like a salsa roja, or maybe a salsa verde, something.
Not attaboy.
And then either chicken or carne asada if I had to pick, but I don't necessarily need that. Like, I prefer just like cheese and chips.
Okay. Yeah, I'd go meat of some kind, chicken or carne asada, as you guys have said, and then I would probably go guacamole and sour cream as my two on top.
That's a good choice.
So there you go. Steak, guacamole, and bacon is one of the thoughts here. I mean, bacon's good on a lot of things. I'm not sure it's making my top 3. Although I was going to say pico de gallo might be 4th on my list, and it sounds like I was going to get criticized for that one.
That's fun.
Okay. Jalapenos. I mean, look, the reality is I want like 9 things on my nachos is the real answer here, but I felt like we had to, carnitas. That would be another great one. It's a great, that's a great nachos dish. So anyways, folks, we have gone long. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a great show. As always, again, 7-10 p.m. every Sunday night. I will be here. Usually Matt is here. Sometimes AJ, sometimes Blake. Depends on the night. Maybe Daniel Starkin, who is out in Boston. So please make plans to join us next week. Sunday, we'll be back here. We've got some post-game shows as well in the works this week. One note, typically we do Tuesday and Friday. We will be doing a Tuesday post-game show, and the Friday show is going to move to Thursday. That's the series opener against the Braves, plus 3-day weekend. We didn't really want to mess with the Friday deal. So Tuesday and Thursday post-game shows this week. Be on the lookout for that. We got tons of content coming, as always, so make sure you're subscribing the notification bell here on YouTube. If you're a podcast person, we keep plugging it because it's new, and we would love to have you join us on that platform. But we are doing podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google. Search for DodgerHeads. You'll find us. Give us a follow, a rating, and review. Even if you're not a consistent listener, that would be greatly appreciated. And, of course, DodgerBlue.com. You can find stuff from Matt, AJ, Blake, Scott, all of the guys there as well. That is Matt Moreno. That is AJ Gonzalez. My name is Jeff Spiegel. The Dodgers, 80 wins, 4-2 this week. 12-game lead in the division. They keep rolling. So enjoy the rest of your night. And as always, go Dodgers.